this. Okay, so still life photography. And again, this is kind of my my go at it or whatever. I think it's changed a lot recently, but still life photography is a unique genre of photography in which the photographer is creating an image rather than capturing a moment. From setting to us, from setting the objects and even lighting and mood, the photographer can bring their creative vision to life. You don't always need a fancy studio or gear to create beautiful photographs. You can use a table near a window or even an outdoor scene. So this one is one that I consider still life. I'm probably going to go through all my slides first and then come back and look at some of the links that I have in there or talk about the images once I've gone through some of the things that I want to talk about. If I can get my just to go to the next screen. Click. One of the things you want to do is to figure out what you want to shoot. One of the easiest things to start with are flowers and fruits, which are, I don't know, they just have that look to them. You can work with the curves in the flowers and fruits also. Vegetables are good. Collections, you might collect things. Right now I'm trying to collect some old teapots and some water jugs or whatever, and I think I want to try doing a series with them. Flowers are easy to find, especially if you work at a flower shop like I do. You guys can all hear me there, right? Somebody speak up. Somebody tell me yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. So when you're doing them, you might want to think about doing this collection so that you can get your best three and hang it as a three together like this up on a wall. Lighting. So I think these are the main things that you can think about for lighting. The first and easiest, of course, is natural light and using window light and then controlling that window light. The second is constant lighting. So something you can even use lamps. You can use constant lighting, professional constant lighting. One girl on here was using a ring light that a lot of the hair and makeup people are using right now, and she really likes them, and you can get them pretty cheap right now. If you have off-camera flash for any of your portrait work, you can use that. And the last is light painting, and I don't think I've gone into light painting at all in this talk, but this certainly, a lot of these looks could be done with light painting. And again, I'll come back to these other things here later. For camera, any camera will do. The most important thing, I think, as far as your camera, what you need is that you need to be able to control your exposure, because a lot of times you're working with like a lot of the old time still lifes are really a dark picture. So your background is quite dark. And so your camera's going to read that and try to lighten the picture up. So you need to have that exposure control on your camera so that you can tell it, hey, I don't want it really light. I want this to show up so that only the bright spots are bright and the background is dark, and everything you're controlling what's dark and what's light in your picture. And I think lenses are not, you can start with any lens that you've got. Probably a longer lens is better, just because you're not like if you're sitting with your pot or whatever on a table, and if you use something like a 35 or 24 lens, you'd have to get really close in order to not get a whole bunch of background. Like, you don't want the edges of your backdrop in the picture, you don't want the window in the picture, and then if you get real close, then you're distorting the image that you're taking. So I think a longer lens is better, something around 85. A 50 is probably still okay. And again, sometimes you might be, if you've got a 35 that has a macro lens, you might use it in that way, and using the macro part of the 35 in order to get a still life picture. If you like bokeh, like what's in this image, where bokeh or bokeh, so that the background is very soft and out of focus, then you'll need a lens that has a wider aperture. But you don't, but not all still life has done that. I think traditional still life, ones that you would call more fine art, usually have more detail in them, so that the subject that you're taking is you can see every bit of detail in that image, and that's what makes it really fine art. Tripod is really handy, especially if you're working indoors, because you're probably controlling the light so much that you're really having a slower shutter speed to control what you are lighting and what you aren't lighting. Other handy things, a black foam core, a white foam core, and sheer fabric, those are all just to control your lighting, especially if you're doing window light. You might want the sheer fabric over your window so that it creates a softer light. The black foam core you would use to block the light so that only certain things, I'm not sure if I can get on here, but I'll talk about it later on Instagram. There's a lot that I follow that do food photography. And if you find them, you will see that they use a lot of black foam core to control the light so that the light is only hitting the muffin or whatever it is that's in the front of their setup. And so that it's not lighting up the background, because the background they want dark, and then they use the foam core to block the light from the background so that the highlight of the subject of the image is highlighted. And opposite of that is if you use white foam core on the opposite side of where your light is, then you're filling in the shadows. In this picture, I believe I had the light, I had I had a constant light on the right side of the image, because you can see that one, what it is, even the flower there, I think it's a tulip there, and it's kind of got a little bit of bright spot, and I use the foam core on the left hand side of the image to fill in some of those shadows on that side. And then just props, pictures to take pictures of, and things to add to the story. We'll get into this one later. Editing, Joel Grimes, you'll see when we get back in there, he does a lot where he shoots on a mid-gray background, and a mid-gray background is good because then if you're adding a texture or if you're adding an actual image to the background, if you use your screen or your multiply or the darken or lighten on a mid-gray, then that is fairly easy to do. If you have something like a black background and the image that you're trying to superimpose on it is a dark image, you won't be able to do that unless like you might be able to say lighten, but it's kind of strictly, it limits what you can put in the background. So he does that, and we'll go back and we'll see a few of his pictures there where he's added scenes to the background. Or you can add textures on top. So texture in the background in the photo editing process refers to the perceived feel, appearance, or consistency of the surface or subject. It's essentially an image overlay of a textured surface, and when applied to your own image, adds a visual element that give your photos depth and perceived feel. I hope everybody, if anybody's coming late, they can get in here, because I can't. Oh, maybe I can see. Not sure I can see all the. I think everybody got in on their own, so they should be able to still. And these are just some links. I'm gonna see if I can go to this Edward. If I just click here, or if I will lose you guys. Can you guys see his pictures there? Or are you still on my PowerPoint?
Oh, we can see him.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is one guy that I just came across as I was doing this research. I'll get up here. This is from 500 pixels. And you can see his still life and the kinds of subjects that he finds to take pictures of and create stories with, with the things that he adds, the little props that he adds. And I'm not good at at telling you what to do to add stories or whatever. I would say that he works with color a lot, how he brought the colors and the oranges and then added something else here that was red. He carried his greens through here, but he added the story of the book and somebody reading while that food was there. So these are just the types of still life images that you can create. These are kind of in between that old time still life. They aren't really all that dark. Some of them are, but a lot of them are this just kind of a mid color. And I'm not really positive. If we studied them, we could probably tell what kind of lighting he was using. But so I'll go back, oops, I think, to this. And that was last. Go back to the beginning.
Lorelei, I noticed that in some of those pictures of his, he's got some landscape shots in that. How does that fit in with the definition?
Oh, his just aren't all still life.
Oh, okay, I understand.
There's a
Thanks.
lot of still life, so I didn't pull out. That's just his 500 pixel thing. So he has still life mixed up in there. So the
Okay.
landscape are not still life.
Yeah, thanks.
So Joe Grimes is one that I said adds backgrounds to his, and you can see he's got like an old building back here behind his scale and his. Can you guys see my mouse when I move it around or no?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
So you can see the building that's back here. So he would have taken this picture on a gray background. He lights his with a strobe light, and then he would have added this background and the texture on top afterwards. And I'm going to go just a little. Oops, hang on. Figure out where we at here. And you guys can see his thing here. I've switched up.
Still life, it's something you can do in a very small space. The creative process is the same no matter if you're approaching a subject, a portrait, or you're shooting a car. There's a creative process that takes place. There are choices that have to be made, creative choices. I love that. Here's where I think the still life really shines. It's creating images that you can not only put on your wall, but you can go and put in a gallery or sell to other people. We're going to talk about the equipment. We'll talk about the props. We're going to go into the retouching side of how I make it all happen. I'll show you how I go and build all these images and how to manipulate your light to get the really beautiful painterly look. Sometimes you say, I don't know where to start. Well, that's okay. Just start.
So these are some of the images here. Again, the backgrounds are always just added in afterwards, but his lighting is just so impeccable. It's really cool. And with lighting is what you really need to control is how soft or hard that light is on you. All of his are so soft because he'll have his softbox really close to the image, so that will create, or close to the subject, and that will create a nice soft lighting on there. But there's a lot to learn to control the lighting. These tools, and these are just some ideas of things that you can take pictures of. These tools, he was actually at a shop or an antique or somebody's place, like a shop that he had, and he just really loved all these old tools. So he came back the next day with a little light and a backdrop that a small backdrop that he threw on the floor, and just went through this guy's tools and took pictures of them using one strobe lighting down on top of them. The flowers, sometimes he does them on the ground, like I said, with those tools, and sometimes he does them like you saw in that video where they'd be up, and he's creating the image by the way the flowers are curving or joining together. And there's some more tools. So this one I put, whoops, come back here. This box is another way to control the light when you're using window light. So the farther back that your flower is in the box, then the darker the image is going to be. And as you bring it more forward and more forward, you'll see that window light just brushes over the front of the box and lights certain parts of the flower. So that's how I did my black and white that's right beside it. I had it inside of a box, and I was just controlling the light on it by moving it back and forth in the light. I think on the, let's see if I can go back here. Oops, shouldn't have done that. Wait, hang on. You can see on this one, you can see a little bit of the background, like there's a line right there. And there's a line up here, that's those lines in a box. But just by noticing that, you can see that you could get a box and you could like maybe get some stucco or just add some wood back there, or even just throw some extra pieces of cardboard that you might glue back there. And because it's farther back and the light is not getting to it, it'll be black, but you might create some texture back there because of what you've put on the very back of the box.
Are you using a monitor or do you run back and forth to your camera when you're adjusting the distance into the box?
I'm back and forth to my camera. I haven't got that hooked up yet. But well, I guess I'm fairly close. So this, I'm going to go a little bit into the girl that's shooting this here. I think I'm going to, let's see what all we do here. I need to go down here. I believe this is right.
It'll stay in by itself. So if I'm in the guest bedroom and I'm using the one light.
This is normally how you would shoot with the window. So you would have a window on one side and then your images here. And by controlling how far or close to that window is, you're again controlling the light that's on there. In this section, she's talking about this little, I think she's using a knockoff of the ice light, but it's basically an ice light. And that's how she's filling in the shadows on this one. But you can just have a piece of foam core. And when I was talking about the extra things you need, if you had a piece of white foam core over here, then that would fill in the shadows. The farther you are away from the window, you should have farther away from the window, the less difference there will be between the bright side and the dark side of the shadow. So that's how you kind of control what you're doing, right? Closer it is to it, the bright window is really shining on this side. And then the opposite side, the shadows will be darker because it's so bright by the window. But it's just a matter of moving your images around and controlling, like take a picture and then you see if you don't like the way how dark it is on one side, that you know you need to put in a piece of foam core there. I
want a low light kind of situation. I could stand that up on my table shooting towards my subject, and I don't have to stand there holding it. Here I have it laying down, which works great for something like this to reflect light back in, but it's really handy. I love using that little thing. This is another setup that I love.
Still life photography make you sound American?
Shooting some flowers in a box. And I love this because the box, and I have a crate that I shoot in, which we'll see a little further along in our slideshow. But what I love about shooting in a box is it helps you control all the light. And so I have the light coming in from the window, and I have the box kind of controlling all the light around the flowers. So I get some really pretty shadows shooting like this. And the reason that I like shooting in a box is because rather than just a black card or a black backdrop, is because it gives you some really pretty depth to your shadows. It gives you a deepness that shooting in front of just a flat black card wouldn't give you. So just to give you an example, this is that photo I'm taking right there. And you can see, you have some really pretty depth back here. It's not like it's sitting in front of something that's flat and black. It's actually got some depth to it. So I love that. And I've used an Amazon box here. So if you get...
And I think I'm going to move forward. If I can find where she was talking about textures. I think I'll skip it. But this Two Little Owls studio. See if I can find where it says up here. Anyway, she's called Two Little Owls. And she does a lot of floral photography and a lot of so she sells textures. It sounds like I'm doing an ad for all of these guys, but I really like her work. And you'll see her work with adding things to tell the story, like how she drapes a piece of this piece of fabric and what kind of fabric she used to add that texture and how it flows and whatnot, and adding things to your story. So she's a good one to look up online and look at her stuff. So this one, we're going to go through a few. This one deconstructs a few lighting situations for some, and it's pretty good. Except I wanted to, oh, hang on. I want to jump ahead here.
The model never shows up late. Dead flowers. And to find junk and photograph it. So he has an old bottle that he found out on the streets or in an alley somewhere, and inside are a bunch of dead flowers. And beautifully arranged because you can do anything you want with still life. So he's got some dead weeds in an old bottle that's all filthy dirty that you see there against the black background. But look at how everything just seems to sparkle here. What he's doing, he's using something called dark field lighting. And I'm going to show you what that does. By the way, notice the nice highlight right down the side of this. We can show you how he got that this way. This is dark field lighting. This is a black card in front of a softbox. So when the camera is looking at the subject, it only sees the subject against the black. These two little bits of white are what come around and light up the sides of the bottle and give the edge to all the plants. And notice he doesn't have it go all the way to the top. He actually leaves a little space at the top so that the light can grab the tops of these as well. So the light is essentially bending around, even though it's really, I shouldn't say that. You know what? It's not. What's happening is that everything reflects. If you know if you know anything about me, and some of you may not, but I coined a term for lighting called subject-centric lighting. Everything reflects. Dirty bottles reflect, old dead weeds reflect, everything reflects. And so we are giving something for this subject to reflect right on the edges. Angle of incidence, angle of reflection. If there's one rule in photography that is absolute, it is that one. Angle of incidence equals angle of reflection. So this light is not being seen by the front of this bottle, but as that bottle goes right around to that edge, boom, boom, angle of incidence, angle of reflection. Let's look at the shot again. Pretty nice. This little fill card is what is giving him that light right there. And on top, to throw some light down on everything here, is a little beauty dish. The power of the beauty dish is very low. The power of the dark field lighting is brighter.
So you could do that in front of a window by putting the foam core in front of a window and then controlling the sides of the lighting that's coming in. If you want to, with either more foam core or with your shears or your drapes that are coming there. You wouldn't really need the light that's overhead. You could probably work out another reflector there just to reflect the light down. So you could do this all without strobe lighting. Not that you'd want to shoot a bunch of weeds, but
still life. Look at the light. Look at the select focus that she's using through here, grabbing this part of the shoe, making it in focus. We catch this little photograph of this little girl's face. We see these are old baby shoes. We just got, look at how the light catches the edge here. It's really, really lovely. How was it done? Well, with one light and these panes of glass up against the window of her studio. So this is the window out here. And these are, this is a door, I believe she bought a door with all the glass, or possibly that's material. I honestly can't remember. That may be material now that I think about it. Yes, so it's a frame with material over it, and the light is coming in through the window that way, and she's adding just a little wink of fill here with her speed light in this octabox. If I remember right, the speed light was down like a 64th or 128th power. All it was doing was filling in right up front here and letting the light from that window wrap all the way around. Look at the size of the light source up close to these shoes. This light is lighting up stuff here because it can see it. It can see it here. It's just wrapping all the way around. All she needed to do was fill in just a tiny little wink of light. Isn't that a lovely photograph? I love it. Charlotte Larson looks like something taken in an old museum. Some very, very subtle light. We've got the candle up there. Sorry about that. I need to keep my finger off the mouse. Got the candle burning up here. Really nice. We give a nice glow all the way through. got light everywhere. How is this done? How is this done? Well, actually, it's done in her living room with natural light. That's right, with natural light. Hanging a big black.
Yeah, so you can see that she's almost doing the same kind of thing because she's putting this black light. There's light coming from around here that's lighting up certain parts of it coming from around here. And the same thing is she blocked off some, but she wanted some light coming from up here to light it. So it's all done with natural light and really, really pretty lighting.
Piece of material back here.
Skip ahead.
Say, it herself, dark area here. Meh, photography from really good photography. This is not a camera, folks. There's not a whole lot of Photoshop done on this image.
So this is one where I say you really need to be able to control the exposure on your camera, because if your camera looks at this image, it's going to try to brighten it right up so that it doesn't have all this darkness and depth to it. So you need to be able to tell the camera to shoot 1 stop underexposed or shoot 2 stops underexposed, or to be able to manually set your exposure on there so that it doesn't try to brighten that image up.
Right, look at that little highlight.
I don't know if I care about the fruit
counters and look at these things, looking up at a bowl of apples. Wow, the size, everything is just amazing. Notice the light is catching inside the bowl here. That's really cool. It makes it look like the bowl's lit up. No, he's not doesn't have a light inside it. He's just using a double scrim here of Translum or Roscolux, one of the others, probably Translum. It's double scrimmed. He's got a speed light with a Stoffen attachment on it, and he's got it angled so it catches this back of the light, back of the bowl. The bowl is ceramic. It's very shiny, so it's going to be very bright where it catches that reflection. So by setting it up in the perfect right place to get that reflection, that's how Frank made this photograph so interesting. Really, really lovely still life shot by Frank Grisier. Gabriel Alvarez arranged shells, kind of a personal photograph of these shells on a really neat surface, and the light is just absolutely stunning. It's so soft, it's so pretty. Look how it wraps around each one of those shells, giving us the shape, the texture. We have the texture of the board and everything. And what was his light? Well, it was a window. It's got the window a little bit farther away. A little bit if the closer you move this set to the window, the softer the light becomes. But he's got it moved back a little bit so he can get a little bit of an edge to it. See how we're getting the darker shadows? Get right up next to the window light. Those shadows get a little bit softer. Bring it farther out, and we have this nice little arrangement of shadow and light. It's just really pretty. Love it. Frank Grisier. Heather Gill took a very simple photograph of a very simple product, an artichoke. It's just magnificent. It's in close. We have this great texture and color everywhere, and the light looks like it's amazing, but again, and it is amazing light, again, it's so simple. Now, in this case, she's right up against the window, and she's surrounded the artichoke with black, not white. This is not a white fill card over here. This is black. The window is so big, it's wrapping around the artichoke on its own. She didn't want that artificial feeling that a white card would do to this side of the artichoke. She wanted it to go dark and moody, and she allows that to happen. Now notice that she's got the black card. Do you see this? It's angled. It's not straight across. It's at a bit of an angle. Why is she doing that? So that the black card can catch a little bit of reflection of the light source right there. Very little Photoshop in this photograph. That dark card is practically perfectly black over here, and we just got a little bit of a reflection on the card right back here. Really, really cool. A lovely shot, and something you can do easily too with a window. One last shot from Marty Kaufman. Marty wanted to do something a little bit special. We've all heard of moon rocks. So Marty created a moon rock photograph for us.
I don't think we'll get into that one. That one, he's just basically got a picture of a moon up on a black thing up here, and he's got these rocks set up here, and it's just shining the light down onto there. So he's creating an image. So it's all about creating your image. But I thought those were all really interesting, so you can see how important light is in still life images. Let's see. So my suggestion where I get most of my ideas is to be going to Instagram. If you go to Instagram, you can see all sorts of, and once you link onto one, of course, it's going to start showing you all sorts of different ones. I've been looking at it because of the food photography and product photography that I've been doing with the flower shop there. If you go into here, you'll find raw flat lays, but there's also like raw community, raw, you'll see raw silhouettes, raw whatever. If you find one, you'll probably link to the rest of them. But this is kind of another type of still life, which I think is not so much leaning towards the old fashioned, but the light is still really, really important. But most of all those images that you saw before were quite, had quite a large depth of field. Like if you saw that artichoke and all the detail that you can see in it. Whereas here you start getting, fooling around with a little bit softer images. I'm trying to find one that's shot sideways. Well, that girl that shoots through the box, she shoots really, really shallow depth of field. So that Denise Love and Two Little Owls, if you look at her site, you'll see a lot of really soft images. So images like this, where they'll focus on the coffee cup, and then a lot of stuff in the background is going to be out of a little bit out of focus, at least. Here's one that has a really shallow depth of field. So all of these are still life. They're whether they're shot sideways and they're creating a story. And I'm not, as Ian was talking about stories before, I'm not really great on stories, but you do kind of click to images that have different things in the image in it. I think it's the way your eye follows things around, and that creates a story, whether there's an actual story there or not. It's different than just taking a picture. It's the idea of looking at it and analyzing it and seeing what's in your image. So here's one that's taken from above, but it still uses just window light. You can tell the window light's coming from over here. And you can see by the shadows and whatnot. So some of it is controlling the shadows with the sheer fabric. It might be only shooting at certain times of day so that you've got the right kind of light coming through your window. Direct, you know, if the bright sun is shining through your window in the mornings, that's probably not the best time to shoot. You probably want a real diffuse light coming through. But again, Instagram, if you search lay flats, or if you search still lifes, here's one that's built around sewing and bobbins. It's just a great place to look for ideas that might give you something to think about. If you have something special at your home that you want to photograph, then create a story around it. And work with window light. Window light is just really, really, really pretty. And I think that's all. Is there anything that anybody wanted to see in here before I stop screen sharing? What time is it? No, I'm going to stop screen sharing. Hopefully you're all still there.
Yeah, I'm here.
I think that's the end of my talk, unless there's somebody that wants to know more.
I have one question. What if I'm working with black items? Like I've chosen old antique cameras for my project and they're all black. Do I use the white cardstock so that they show up and not the black? I don't want them blending in with the black board.
If you want a really, really, really nice fine art image, you would stick with the dark background, but you need to control the light so that you've got some kind of light coming from the background, how like that one where they had that light coming from behind the black card, so that it wraps around and just kind of highlights all around the edge of it, and that to create the separation between your camera and the background. I think, I mean, it depends. Like if you were doing product photography and you just wanted to show off the camera, then you probably would do it against a white background. But I don't think you want product photography. I think you want something that creates a really beautiful, moody image with those cameras. So I think you would, I think you would want a dark background and to really work on controlling the light that's hitting the cameras.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, Lorelei, if I could just add a comment to what he had referred to with the angle of incidence, angle of reflection, an old rule from physics. Another one that's quite important, particularly in close-up and still photography, is the distance from the light source to the subject. He was saying that if you're close to the window, you'll get softer light. But if you're closer to the window, the other thing that happens is that if you're just using, say, use this. If this is your subject, if you're closer to the light, well, actually you can see it on my face too. This light is quite a bit brighter, and that can be done partly by the window, but also as I get closer, it gets brighter. And the same thing with this box here, as it gets closer, here you can see where it's darker on this side, and that's simply because it's closer to the light. And that's something to watch for. It can work nicely, as he showed, where the black was angled very close to the window. I think that was with the artichoke. But again, just to be aware of that, you need to have that knowledge so that you can control the light, because otherwise you might not know why it's happening that way.
Yeah, and it has to do with how big your window source is too, because if you've got a great big window, then it's wrapping around to the other side, which is what's causing that softness that he talks about. But you're right, the closer to the window it is brighter. So you have to watch that too. It's probably better then in that case to be, diffusing that light with a shear, but still letting it wrap around. Like if you were to stand in for like the way you are right now, the light's not wrapping around to the right hand side, so you'll have quite dark shadows on one side and compared to the brightness on the other side. So it's often best to have the light, and it does this with portrait too, is to have the light washing in front of the subject, which Rini probably knows more about, because the old Dutch photographers or whatever, what do you call the lighting, Rembrandt lighting and whatnot, it was all done, your mic's off, Rini, but it was all done by controlling the window light that was coming down. It was coming down in front of the person rather than beside it. So the way you move your subject, it's usually you'll be starting with the light source with your subject a little bit back of the light, a little bit back of the window, or a little bit to the back side of the window, so that there's all that light washing in front of it. But then if you find you want more shadows, you'll probably bring the subject up closer to the camera is what would be. And then that way the light's not wrapping around the image, then it's just hitting one side and you'll have the other side is really dark. So the whole idea is just controlling that light. And if you feel like there's too many shadows, it doesn't always mean that you need to put a reflector card there. Sometimes it means moving your subject back a little bit farther so that light has a chance to wrap around to the other side of your image.
Does still life mean inanimate objects, or can you do it with something living?
There was, when I looked on Instagram and I looked at still life, one of the still life hashtags, they had a lot of these lay flats where some in food photography, there's a lot where most of it's still life, but they'll have just the hand of somebody pouring something into a glass or dropping some fruit or something like that. They consider that still life. So I don't know. To me, that isn't. To me, it's something that isn't going to move once you set it up. But I don't know. That's why I say, because in the old days, when they had the paint, when the painters were painting it and they set it up and they had the window, they're not going to be having anything in that image that's going to be moving. They've got it all set up there and they're painting it, so they're not going to have anything that's moving. So that's why I say it's kind of changed lately, because if you look up still life, you'll see some things that are in it. But if you want to be safe, I would say nothing should be moving. But even the, you know, how you do the images of like a strawberry dropping into a glass, and the water moving up. I will see that a lot of places considered still life, but I personally, I wouldn't consider it still life, just because it's not as controlled. It isn't something you could light with paint, or you could paint with light. And I feel like almost like still life should be something that you could paint with light if you wanted to, but the official answer, I don't know for sure. Have you guys all started something for a theme this month?
Yes, I started on my swirl project, and I'm gonna be starting on the still life probably this weekend. My mom's digging out her old cameras for me.
That'll be nice.
Yes.
I think just going back to the question, okay, if there are animate objects in there or not, my sense is what tells your story the best, what gets your point across the best. You know, if you're doing an old thermos and an old thermos lid, if it tells a story best having workman's hands in there, fine. If it doesn't, if it's the wear and tear of the items themselves, then
Yeah.
then not.
Yeah. I don't know, on my definition at the beginning, they said it was just what I had at the beginning. It just said inanimate objects, right? Or did it say that? I can't remember. But
I'm over 50. I don't remember that back. If it was 40 minutes ago.
I can't remember where I got that, where I got it from. It says, which creating an image rather than capturing a moment. So if you consider that, where you say the photographer is creating an image rather than capturing a moment, then that's okay with the hands in that, because you're actually creating. I lost my zoom here. Because you're creating, even though the hands are in there, you're creating that image with your hands, right? It's not like you accidentally came across somebody who's making a muffin or whatever. You're creating, and like Rini said, adding the hands to it creates that image and creates a story. So I would say that we would consider it part of still life.